Olá, boa noite a todas as pessoas. Um prazer poder estar aqui nessa noite especial. E a todas as pessoas que acompanham a programação do Sexto TEIAS, Congresso Internacional Brasil em TEIAS, que esse ano traz o tema Palestinidades. É uma grande alegria estar aqui para mediar essa mesa, que integra um dos debates mais urgentes e mais sensíveis do nosso tempo. A mesa de hoje, ela tem como título o debate sobre o genocídio em Gaza, sobre a ótica dos estudos da neutralidade, globalização da denúncia e a expansão da conscientização política. É um tema que exige não apenas uma coragem intelectual, mas também um olhar profundamente informado e, sobretudo, entender o funcionamento das relações internacionais, da diplomacia e das estruturas globais de poder. Discutir Gaza, a partir dos estudos da neutralidade, abre uma via analítica rara, que nos permite compreender como estados, organizações e atores institucionais se movem, se justificam, silenciam e ainda se posicionam diante de crimes de massa, de operações militares e de denúncias internacionais de violações sistemáticas dos direitos humanos. E é justamente por isso que temos a honra de receber nessa noite um dos pesquisadores mais relevantes no campo dos estudos da neutralidade e de sua história e de seus usos políticos contemporâneos, o professor Dr. Pascal Lottaz. O professor Lottaz articula em sua obra, uma vasta obra, uma perspectiva histórica minuciosa, com uma reflexão teórica muito precisa sobre diplomacia, a guerra e as estratégias de posicionamento. E de não posicionamento em relação aos Estados, mas especialmente durante conflitos assimétricos e em contextos de guerra em grande tensão global. Sua pesquisa sobre a atuação em países neutros da Segunda Guerra Mundial, sobre as diplomacias consulares e sobre o papel da neutralidade no cenário geopolítico complexo, nos oferece ferramentas valiosas para pensar esse momento presente. Em um mundo marcado por denúncias internacionais, pelo papel das mídias digitais na ampliação da consciência política e por contradições cada vez mais agudas entre discursos diplomáticos e realidades humanitárias, o pensamento do professor Lottaz e as suas reflexões se torna ainda mais imprescindível nesse momento. É uma grande satisfação recebê-lo aqui conosco nessa noite no Brasil, manhã no Japão, onde ele se encontra, para essa reflexão coletiva. Eu vou passar a palavra para o professor Lottaz, para ele fazer uma saudação breve, e aí depois eu só vou ler brevemente o resumo, o currículo dele. Good morning, Professor. Before I read your resume, I'd just like you to say a few words to the audience here in Brazil. I just said it's been a pleasure to have you here with us tonight here in Brazil and in this early morning in Japan. If you could say just a few words of introduction before I introduce you and your work, please.
Yes, so thank you very much for your kind invitation and for hosting me on your platform. I think it is a very important thing that we engage across the continents, but also across language barriers. This is one of the things I want to talk about. Apart from my academic work here at the University of Kyoto, this is my office here around me. Aside from that academic work, I'm also running this YouTube channel called Neutrality Studies, and I run that channel in English because I don't speak Portuguese, unfortunately. But thanks to the new abilities that we are given through technology, it is now possible for me to have my English language YouTube channel translated into several other languages, including Spanish and Portuguese. And I suppose that is how you found me and my work, and that is how we were able to connect in the first place. And I very much hope that the subtitles of this live stream are working as well, so that you viewers can understand in Portuguese what I'm saying in English. And this is a beautiful example, if it works, how technology can help us to connect even more. And right now, in this political environment of hate and war, it's even more important that we connect. So I thank you very much for this invitation, and I'll be happy to tell you more also about my work within this hour that we now have together. You are muted. Felix, you're muted. I hope Felix is fine. Everybody, so I don't even know if I'm still online or not, but since the live stream is saying that it is still live, I let me maybe take over and talk a bit through my through this project that I've got. So while I am trying to do this academic research on neutrality in international relations, a field of international relations that is small, but it is growing, I'm also trying to keep a global conversation alive that is focusing and centered around analysis of current affairs. Now, if you're watching this live stream, I suppose that you are aware of just how toxic some of the framing of international events can be in Western mainstream media. I am not sure about the media environment in Brazil. Maybe you are blessed with a more balanced and a more discursive media environment in which different viewpoints on things like the war in Ukraine or the genocide in Gaza get propagated. But in Europe and in North America, the mainstream media framing of these events is very tendentious. It is very directed toward one interpretation of reality, and that is a problem in international relations and in political science in general. In political affairs in general, there always are different ways of understanding the same phenomenon. There must be. So because in current affairs, world politics are subject to interpretation. They change with the way you look at them. And one image I often use is that of a proverb, an Asian proverb, about an elephant. An elephant is a really big animal, and it is actually impossible to see the entire animal at once. Even if you step very far back, you will always see either the left side or the right side, or the back or the front. And if you look at the front of the elephant, you will see a long nose, and you will see its tusks, you will see its big ears if it's an African elephant. If you look at it from behind, you see that the animal has a tail and a round shape and very thick legs, right? And these two perspectives, both of them are correct, but they will give you a different description of the animal. Now, current affairs, world politics, international relations are very similar to that. Depending on the point from which you look at them, you will interpret them differently. And this used to be a matter of course. We used to understand that naturally the viewpoint impacts the impressions of the observer about what is being observed. And the role of traditional media used to be to reflect these different viewpoints and actually create a dialogue between them, right? In order to understand the different nuances, the different perspectives of the phenomenon. So if we have a war in Ukraine, then the job of the media, of mainstream media, would be to analyze and to give us the different interpretations about that war. If you have mass murder in West Asia, in Palestine, then the job of the media would be to give us these different interpretations of what's happening in order for us, the informed public, to make up our minds to how we ourselves understand these phenomenon, because we are not there. We cannot see firsthand what's happening. And even if we did see firsthand what's happening, we would miss other pieces of information, like the political analysis of what's happening in the Kremlin and in Kiev and in Tel Aviv and in and inside Gaza, right? We need different streams of information in order to understand what's happening. Now, unfortunately, in West Asia, in Europe, in Western Europe, and in in Europe in general and in North America, the mainstream media has stopped doing that. They have stopped trying to provide different perspectives, and they have started and are increasingly doing more of framing, of deciding how certain events must be understood. Meaning that they already on the editorial level are starting to decide what can be said, what cannot be said, who can be interviewed, who cannot be interviewed, and how do we have to present certain events. This was extremely clear during a previous crisis. The crisis was the COVID-19 crisis. During that event, starting in the early January, February 2020, the media very clearly started switching to a model in which they started understanding themselves as the providers of safe information, the right information, the good way, the healthy way of understanding the crisis that we were going through. They went from informing about the different aspects of the problem to directing the thinking of their viewership. Now, this is not new. The media used to do this before as well. They did it with the Iraq War. They did it with the Afghan War. They did it with with Yugoslavia. But it is becoming stronger and stronger, and it's becoming more and more narrow. The kind of discussion that is still possible to do within public media. Now, what is different at the moment is that we now do have social media. We do, since about 10-15 years, we have access to platforms like this one, like YouTube, in which individuals like you and I can start our own little distribution channels and then talk directly to other people on the other part of the globe. Now, even in other languages, in order to provide our analysis and in order to provide our viewpoints on the elephant that I was talking about, right? And the elephant can be anything. The problem with international politics is, of course, that it is so emotionally charged. It is an extremely personal matter for many people of how they understand what is going on, and if you mix that with attachment to certain groups, with a couple of psychological phenomena, like, for instance, that we tend to think in groups, and we tend to pick certain teams that we like, right? Team Ukraine, Team Russia, Team Israel, Team Palestine. That gets people very heated up. It's a little bit like a football match, right? When you support your favorite team, then you cheer for them and you wish the other one loses. And unfortunately, a similar emotional attachment tends also to happen in large conflicts that then even end in wars. Now, in a healthy media environment, the media would try to calm that down and focus on an analysis about the the origins of the war and emphasize the importance of de-escalation. In the current media environment, at least in Europe and North America, the media is doing the opposite. The media is pushing us into one or the other team in order to support political the political agendas of certain people, of a group of people. And I'm not saying that the media in Europe and North America are directed by the political leaders. No, the problem is a different one. The problem is that we currently have an accumulation of what I call epistemic communities. An epistemic community is a group of people that shares a worldview. And that group of people tries to dominate the discourse and tries to convince everybody else that their worldview is the correct one and everybody else is wrong. So it's also part of this team spirit thinking, right? That you try to assert your interpretation of the world. And this is very, very strong, especially when it comes to the genocide in Gaza. One of the hallmarks of a very heated media and political discourse environment is that even language starts to become an inescapable tool of framing. So the example with Gaza would be that if I call what is happening in Gaza a genocide, then I'm already outing myself as belonging to one group that of interpretation about what is happening in Gaza, right? I belong to the group that interprets this as a very, very grave infringement of human rights and international law. The other side is depicting this as a war against terrorism, right? So even the language we use in order to describe the same phenomenon outs us as being part of one or the other group. Now, this is to a certain extent inescapable, but it is something we need to be aware of when we then have a real global discussion about what's going on. We must suppress the urge to demonize the other side. And this is very difficult for me too, because it is difficult to look at the genocide and the slaughter of women and children and men and boys in Gaza and not get extremely emotional. But for the sake of actually calming also the international environment down, it is important that we do, to some extent, still seek a discussion with those who simply do not agree. And I mean especially those at home, the people, your neighbors and your friends who might think that, well, Israel is just defending itself. This is a discussion we must have, because as sad as it is, but even genocide is a political event. Genocide is essentially political because you need a large group of people to carry it out, and you need to create a machinery of violence to carry it out. So, and what we're seeing with the Gaza genocide is that this machinery is not just one nation. It's not just Israel. It's not just the Zionists. It's not just Netanyahu and his party. It's also Europe. It's also North America. It's the weapons that come from Germany. It's the weapons that come from the United States. It's the permissiveness of these groups in Europe and in North America that block all attempts at the United Nations to stop the slaughter, that prevent attempts at creating political sanctions, putting sanctions on Israel, right? So it is a phenomenon. It is an ultimately political phenomenon, this genocide. And of course, the people who suffer on the ground, they suffer for real and they die for real. But the causes for that are purely in the realm of politics, and they're in the realm of international politics. Now, what then this technology that we have now, social media, but also a simultaneous translation. What they help us to do is to have this global discourse and try to reach out to each other to reframe the situation, right? We are not alone anymore with our thinking, because in the old days, you would listen to the TV and you would get the information from there, and then your circle of discussion of what you see and how you interpret it is maybe the family and maybe your friends and then maybe colleagues at work, right? But that's about it. Every once in a while, you can go to a conference and then listen to somebody speak there, but that's about it. Today, the discussion space is much larger. What we can do here, the way that I can talk to you from Japan and give you my analysis and interpretation of the situation in English, and you understand it in Portuguese, gives us a much broader space to reframe things. The fact that on YouTube you can just scroll through your phone and you can get the interpretation of many people, and then make up your mind about this political event, well, that opens a lot of space, luckily, and that's a good thing. So on the one hand, we have traditional media houses that are now more in the business of propaganda and spin when it comes to international politics than they are in the business of informing. On the other hand, we have the tools in order to inform each other, not inform, but in order to tell each other how we think that certain elements should be thought about. The great thing for academics in the different universities is that we can directly talk to each other, and that we can directly also broadcast this. This is my project, right? That I try to find people who wrote good books or who wrote good articles, informative, like intelligent articles about a topic, and then ask them, you person who has studied this for a while, can you give me your interpretation? And instead of just having a dialogue, the two of us, I then also broadcast it into English and Portuguese and Spanish and Italian and Chinese and Japanese, and thereby let other people also participate in, like, not participate, but witness the discussion. And hopefully that gives a counterweight to the narrative spin that traditional media has become accustomed to. Now, this doesn't solve the problem. This discussion doesn't solve the genocide. The genocide is still the genocide, and the genocide is still going on. But since genocide is a political phenomenon, since it is a mass effort of large groups of people, and it depends on the buy-in, the acceptance of large groups of people. If we can inform large groups of people about the destructiveness and the horrors that are ongoing, well, then we have a chance to stop it, or to, at least for the next time, to prevent it. Because just remember, Gaza is not the only place in Palestine that Israel wants to control. I mean, Gaza is only one. Gaza is the one which currently experiences the most violence, but there's also the West Bank that experienced extreme violence. There's Lebanon that experienced extreme violence. There is Syria, in which we have extreme violence. There's there are these frontier areas that Israel and the United States want to control, that are experiencing extreme violence. And this violence is something that in the public debate we must understand where it comes from. And if there are large enough groups of people who oppose this, if there are countries in the global south that oppose this, well, then over time there is a chance that we can at least reduce the violence that Israel and the United States are able to use against these victimized groups. So the global south at the moment has actually emerged as one of the largest counter voices, and political weights against the genocide. The fact that South America, Brazil, but also Colombia and Venezuela, that they speak out against the Zionist aggression against the indigenous people of Palestine, and the fact that also countries like China are not supporting Israel the way Europe and North America are supporting Israel. Those are important political decisions and important factors for the future of Palestine. The Gaza genocide, unfortunately, has already been committed and is being committed. So it makes my heart bleed, but it makes the heart of a lot of people bleed. But it is also something that informs us. It's something that gives a lot of clarity about the savagery and the violence of Europe and North America. It takes away this discourse of humanitarianism and humanitarian bombings and fighting terrorism, because we are seeing just how blatantly and how brutally these policies are being implemented in Gaza, and how people and their houses and their livelihood and their culture are being eradicated. Large parts of the world, through traditional media, but also through social media, now understand that the violence in the West is anything but gone. It is here, it is with us, and it is a threat. And it is a threat that needs to be dealt with and contained somehow. And this containment also starts in the brains, in the minds of people, right? So NATO and the United States and Europe too, to a good extent, they already know for a while, for many years, that what they call cognitive warfare is an important battleground. The battle for the mind, the battle for what people believe, is something that they're working on. It is something that they are aware of, and the entire discourse about fake news or misinformation and disinformation is all about this attempt by global elites to have a veto power over what people believe, and to have discursive sovereignty on what their populations believe about one political event or not. And social media, the way we connect with each other, is a counterweight to that. So we see, of course, this discourse about what kind of speech should be allowed or not. And this is the fundamental issue that, especially in the United States, in their constitution, has been inserted in a very prominent place, right? The freedom to speech, the freedom to say what you want and inform others of the way that you think about things. This is not just an old recipe for liberalism. It is a very current principle that, especially in times of social media, is so important. We need to be free to say and speak our minds and provide interpretation points for others, even if that means that we have to live with the fact that other people have other ways of framing the same issue. It goes hand in hand. But the only thing that keeps us from, a totalitarian information space, where information comes top down and where interpretation of the world comes top down, is actually this bottom up approach of freedom of speech and freedom to distribute that speech as well, right? And make it accessible. So the people who oppose a free society and a healthy information space are the people who will tell you that they need to protect you. They need to protect you from bad information, from bad framing, from bad ways of looking at things. And those are not people who want to give you information and who want to let you see the elephant from all different sides. They want you to look at the elephant from one side and one side only. And usually it's a pretty small way of looking at the elephant, because under that small, tiny little way, their approach, their political approach makes sense. Now, long story short, what I am trying to convey to you is that the opportunities that we have through social media are large, and they're good, and they're necessary in order to, especially something like the Gaza genocide or the war in Ukraine, to actually form an understanding of what is really going on. And the people who are curious about this are actually the ones who go searching. They go searching outside the TV and newspaper environment. They seek out other people's interpretations because they do want to see the elephant from these different viewpoints, even the ones they disagree with. Whereas people who are very narratively captured, they try to constantly push you into one interpretation and one interpretation only, and then they try to shut out all counter information or all counter interpretation, because they look at this counter interpretation as a threat to the way that they believe the world needs or the elephant needs to be understood. So I would encourage you to seek out different interpretations in Portuguese, in English, in the languages that are accessible to you, on the platforms that are accessible to you. But the most fundamental thing is never to trust somebody completely. The sad truth is nobody has the answers to everything. Nobody has the complete view of the elephant. So it is up to you, the viewer, it is up to you, the observer, to make up your mind and then decide which perspective you are taking, and be aware of the fact that it is a perspective. Be aware that you will never see everything. Be aware that there are contradictions. And, in a sense, we are now living in a world that puts much more responsibilities on your shoulders, because in the good old days, you could just open your favorite newspaper and trust that newspaper would give you 80% of what's important to know. Well, that trust we cannot afford anymore. We cannot afford to believe that we are well informed just by one or two newspapers. We need to seek out these different interpretations, because we are increasingly living in a world where this framing is becoming part and parcel of the way that different channels, also on YouTube, by the way, how different channels try to make you view the world. And the only one who can make up their mind and make an informed decision is you, the viewer. So in a sense, what we really need to discuss is the media literacy of the viewership. And I do hope that channels like this one and other channels on YouTube help in clarifying this current media environment, and to bring some useful information to you, the viewers. Thank you very much. Felix, are you there? Where's my host? I'm feeling hostless. Hostless in Brazil. If I could see... I can see in the comment section that I can see comments in the comment section. If you send comments, if you send questions, I can probably read them out and try to answer them. Okay, my host is saying we should wait for just a minute until he's back, and I see that he's trying to come back into the room. Felix, are you there? Felix, you're muted. Felix, hello. My apologies. I don't know what you, the audience, are seeing. I am waiting for my host to come back here, but the internet seems not to be working. Felix says he's hardly able to connect to the stream. Felix, I can read your comments. I can see your comments. Am I still live? Am I still talking to your audience?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I hear you now, yes.
You're still talking to the audience. Yeah. And I apologize for this technical problem. Honestly, I was so eager to listen to you, and you are being recorded, and there's audience listening to you as well. So it's.
I'm glad it worked. It's okay, and I can actually see the comments. So if audience, if you have some comments, you can send them to me, and I can try to react to them.
All right. But yeah, if it's not so far, I think there will be a lot of issues that I would like to discuss with you. But the first thing I would like to say is, on the behalf of Professor Osmar, he wants to thank you for accepting the invitation. He found you by doing exactly what you were saying here today. You promoted this discussion on this conference, which every year he chooses one specific topic to discuss along a month with different perspectives. And this year in particular, he chose to discuss the issue of the Palestine and also the massacre on Gaza, which has happened in Brazil in many different moments of our history. And and he found your channel on YouTube, and he thought it would be interesting to have somebody that could address exactly the problem that we are having, not only around the world but also in Brazil as well. I don't know how much aware you've been, of our recent history in terms of how a dictator president was elected 4 years ago. In 2019, and he's just been arrested. And the process in which this happened to this country was exactly by this wave of social media, in which, as you said, it's very difficult for the population to go through a lot of information and be able to select, because long ago, what I would say in the country, a larger country like Brazil, is that access to information was very limited, and only the elites could have access to newspaper, first of all, to literacy. But the area in which we live now, in which everybody has access to their status or social class, the issue that we live now at the moment as a problem is the amount of information and how we go through that, and how we are able to distinguish what see, as you said, the elephant through different perspectives, and have a sensible understanding of what is going on. And the second issue which I like to address is that also the problem of language. not only the first thing you mentioned is that we have this language barrier, between one language and another, but within a single language like Portuguese that we speak in Brazil, there are levels. This language is not one wholeness. We do have the same language, but we hardly understand each other sometimes because of a lot of issues. One of them is the stratification of social class. You know what I mean? And also, how do we access to that information? And as I was listening to you, I had classes last night on literature, and the students always feel not sure how to deal with a literary text. But you were saying here is the same, with the information about an issue such as the Palestine and Gaza. One does not feel equipped with the how to interpret that. And I think what you point out as I think you should explore a little bit more is that how an initiative like yours that not only put one person like you discussing with the other, but creating a sort of community in which we can not approach each other, but also put in contact our points of view. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know. I know what you mean. And actually, you're putting your finger on a very, very important topic. It's like, how can we break out of the isolation of being caught in our own mental space, because we are left with all of these questions, right? So you read a newspaper, you read a magazine, you watch this channel, that channel, listen to this podcast, and you're left with, okay, I have a lot of information, I have a lot of viewpoints, and what the hell am I supposed to make out of this? Why should I, little person in Brasilia, in Rio de Janeiro, but also in Buenos Aires and in Paris and in London, how am I supposed to know what's right and what's wrong? And unfortunately, there is no silver bullet to solve that problem. There isn't. But we can try to create, I think this is what we are working on. We are working globally in this media space, social media space, on trying to figure out, trusted sources, trusted voices for different reasons that we can go to for overall guidance of what makes sense, who explains things well. And we, in a sense, we are rebuilding at the moment in the social media sphere what already was built and is failing in the traditional media sphere. In the traditional media sphere, you have, we have the traditional media now for about 400 years, right? The press. And within 400 years, we created a lot of ways of solving that problem, this trustability problem. So large media houses, they work with editors, right? And different layers of editors that are supposed to be able to put stuff into context, and they have certain guidelines in order to inform the public properly and create a good system, right? This is why newspapers read so well, why they look very respectable. The problem with that model is that it got ideologically and politically captured. So they become, instead of information spaces, they become propaganda spaces. The problem in social media is you have so much that you don't know how to make up your mind. But what we are doing at the moment, I believe, is also creating the networks, of people who review each other. So you and I, we work in academia, and when we work on a topic, we see that when we do our research in any topic, you read book number 1, and that book has a lot of footnotes, and you don't know any of them, and then you read the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth book, and then the 20th and then the 50th book, and by the time you arrive at the 50th book, the footnotes, you will have read a lot of them already. You will know them. You will know who made what argument, and that's the moment when you reach the kind of the boundaries of the topic. And I think what's happening at the moment is a similar effect, but in social media, where people start, reviewing this channel, this discourse, and then they start talking about each other, and you start creating a mental map and create your mental understanding of which group of people and whose interpretation is what. And that takes time. It takes a lot of time, but it is a necessary part of the, of the process. What we can try to do is to help with platforms to create, connections among these different interpretations. So what I mean with this is that the technology has an impact in the way that communities can find each other. So I view my channel, Neutrality Studies, in English, but also in the foreign languages, as a way to reach out to a community of like-minded or like-framed people, and then enable them to have discussions also among each other. And this comes also from my experience, as a gay man. I had to find others who are similar to me. And the biggest problem the gay community had in the past was that it's difficult to find the others, because we look like everybody else, right? So in a sea of 1,000 people, you don't know who is who. And the same thing is now true for you and I. Although you might not be gay, you might have a certain interpretation of the world and you might feel alone. But by being able to tap into the networks and connect, and then also compare, we become able to understand that we're not alone in our interpretations, and we can then listen and talk to the others. So this network effect, this platform effect, is quite important. So I have no concrete solution to the problem of information overload, but the technologies we are having now are at least enabling us to, bit by bit, build the networks that we need in order to recreate in the social media space the public media space we used to have in the newspapers and so on. Hopefully in the social media space, we will not recreate structures that again enable mass propaganda. I mean, we see how certain people work on that, right? How there is also on social media this turn toward convincing people rather than informing them. But it's to a certain extent inevitable. But at least we can now create this outreach, right, to the others, so that you, the viewers, don't feel isolated anymore. Because as soon as you overcome the feeling of isolation, as soon as you understand you're part of a group that exists and that has good arguments and good reasons and a right to be there, we become a bit more vocal, and we can recreate also peace movements. We can recreate movements for human rights and international law, and we regain the ability to organize ourselves. Because one thing is, the other side constantly tries to isolate us. The discourse about Israel and Palestine tries to isolate you and make sure you don't talk about Zionism, and make sure that you don't talk about certain aspects. The West, how they treat Russia, try to isolate Europe and North America from Russia, so that you cannot have a discourse. So on social media, at least we can create the bridges again in order to have the discourse, because a human-to-human connection is essential. It's essential to combat war propaganda.
Yeah, no, I think thanks a lot for saying that, because regardless of each issue we could be addressing, I think the main point that you profoundly pose here is that how do we establish these connections, and how do we find not only a common ground, but also not even a common language, but a way to approach to make up a collective discourse for understanding what is going on with us and as communities, and also understanding where we come from. So if we come from isolation, no matter if it's one person, because of the social status or the color of the skin or where we were born, but also as communities that feels that they are isolated apart from the world, that they have first of all understand who they are, and they have to find a voice, and then this voice should play a role in this broad the discussion that we are having throughout the world. I think this is. I'm so happy that you can contribute on this discussion, because I'll also say another point is that, but all of these requires time, right? Because when we don't have, as you said many times tonight, we don't have final answers for that. And that's why I pretty much relate your talk today to my literature class last night, which was the last of the summer, which was a class on a point of view on literature. And then I feel that students feel very unsafe and uncomfortable, because each contact with one.
Felix, I'm losing you. I cannot hear you anymore. The internet connection is breaking down again.
Am I back again?
Yes, I hear you again.
Can you? Okay. Yeah. And as I was saying, that pretty much what you said, reminds me of the classes I've got with my students when they're confronted with literature, which is something that they feel that they cannot find the right answer for that. But what the text requires is that they have, you said them many times tonight as well, that put them as agents, that they have to engage and to understand what goes on, and they have to do that from their standpoint, but also to understand, other sides or other perspectives which they are not familiar with. But another thing that you mentioned is, I think was at the very first beginning, I tried to formulate a question, is that among this discourse, which is not only language, but also the media and the social media, one of the matter of fact that they work a lot is images as well. So we're pretty much bombarded by, more than sometimes language, but a language comes interconnected or indivisible with images as well. And while we lived in Brazil, again, in this dictatorship area, was that people would say, well, I saw that there was an image of that, and it was a fake image, in fact. And how can you convince one that what he saw is not what he actually, in fact, is? Because the power of images is so strong, and contest 1,000 words that one might say otherwise.
Yes, I mean the way, in a sense, it's quite interesting that right now we are on the one hand, we are going away from the written word and towards more communication through images on the one hand, but also through the spoken word, right? In a sense, this current period is actually very empowering, also for the masses who do not like to read, but who do like to listen and to have a verbal communication and visual communication. And some people say like, oh, we don't read anymore, it's so horrible, reading is gone. It's like, yeah, that's kind of true, but on the other hand, it's nice to listen to people, because we are actually made to listen, right? In a strange sense, writing was always a tool to convey thoughts across time and space, but now we can cross that divide using other tools and go again to more auditive ways of of communication. And if you think about it, it does have a big upside, which is that in a moment like this where we discuss with each other, I only have a very limited time to formulate my thoughts. So what you hear from me, is being filtered really only through a few layers of my brain, right? On a piece of paper, people have a lot of time, and you and I mean, we write for academia, right? We know how much time we spend on goddamn one sentence because we want to convey the right thing. That is valuable. It's valuable, but it creates again layers of filters. And the good thing about direct communication, especially for people who witness direct communication, is that you also get information about the thought process. You get information about the expressions that we have. So in a sense, we are creating at the moment, or we're having a different media space where we can also take different pieces of information from, and that's a good thing. So I don't think it is bad that we are moving away from reading. We just need to also come to grips with how we use direct verbal communication again in the social media sphere, which is still quite young. I mean, it's about 10-15 years max that we have this back, right? And you see it's still its infancy, actually, this form of communication. And I'm not saying it's better than reading, not at all. I just say it's a different way of human communication.
Yeah, no, this is, I also thought when we were talking, which is we are in its infancy of this media. The access we are all having at the moment is good to a certain point because we can all do it and we can all reach each other. But at the same time, we still have to, by learning with our mistakes, or by learning with everything we're facing together, that how we can make the most of it. And as you said, how you can access each other effectively and strengthen our ties, regardless of the places we are or the language we speak. The tools are there, but we're still learning how to do it, right? And you can only learn by doing it, by being available to do it, which again, pops me the issue of time and willingness to do that. But also, and I think you do a great job on your channel, is that empowering. And it's not like a word that I like a lot, but in English, but given the person the sense that everyone is allowed to participate, right? Everyone, regardless of your background, education, regardless of the language. And you see something interesting to point that out here. We hardly in a conference like that takes about a month with people of different backgrounds and areas of education. Most of the debates are done in our language, in Portuguese. Most of the speakers and the keynote speakers are in Portuguese. So what we are doing tonight, doing this conversation and inviting people to engage on the conversation with us, because we are doing in English, that has a limitation. Most people will not listen to us, but they will read us, right, at first, and hardly one will feel able to say, "Oh, I would like to have a word between you two guys and participate in this conversation," because using a language that is off-bound to me, for instance, right? And the thing that also calls my attention in terms of how one feel committed or willing to take part when there is also the issue of the use of media, which we call the person is not familiar with media, so it's literate, right, in terms of using social media. But when one can do that and can access, there comes the issue of the foreign language, which most of the time is English, and then one cannot feel invited to part or challenged to be part of this discourse or this discourse interchange. it was not a question, but it's more like to provoke you in terms of how you've been addressing the issue.
Sorry, you froze for a second, so I didn't know if you were done. Yes, I mean I agree with you. The interesting thing that we're going through again, like, is that that we are changing this way of interaction, and in a sense we're trying to use these new possibilities in order to combat the negative aspects of mass media, the old ways of mass communication, this networked way of communication, which comes with a different set of problems. But in a sense, all we are doing is we are the most current version of problems that generations before us had as well. Every technological step, every technological progress always comes with a question of media literacy, what to believe, how to regulate, where are the limits. Also, the platforms we are using are constantly faced with these issues, and also how do we communicate? What is a good way of giving access to information? 2,400 years ago, we had in Greece the philosophers, right? And probably the most famous one is, of course, Socrates. Socrates never wrote. He never wrote a single word. Everything we know about Socrates, we know because of his student Plato, the next generation. Plato, who then wrote about Socrates. He used Socrates as a character in all of his philosophical treatises and wrote about him. Because Socrates himself said real philosophy happens in the streets. It happens when you talk to others. So he refused the written word and said, I'm only going to do this. But then his student said, like, yeah, okay, you can refuse as much as you want, but I need to write about you because I need to make it accessible to others, and so on and so forth. So, we're just going through the latest version of trying again to figure out how to communicate with others and how to create knowledge, how to create understanding, how to build and form good societies. And that's a very, very old problem. We're just doing it with the most current versions of what is available and what is possible. It is true. Most of you who are following this discussion, you're following it by reading the subtitles. But in about, I would say, in 3 years from now, maybe 4, you will be able to switch to simultaneous translation. I mean, I will be able to speak to you, and you will almost instantaneously hear it in Portuguese. This is not a question anymore of how to do it. It's just a question of enough capacity of the servers to run that, because by now the large language models, the AI capabilities, they can already do simultaneous translations. I mean, you have it, right? If you are reading this, then you're reading basically the AI generated translation. So the translation happens fast enough. The problem is just to be quick enough and have enough computing power on the servers in order to push then also a spoken word at the same time. But this is about 3 or 4 years away. So we are getting closer and closer to also simultaneous cross-language communication capabilities. This will not solve all problems. It will not solve the problem of information overload. It will not solve the problem of what to believe and what not. But it will give us another way, another avenue of cross-cultural and cross-linguistic connections, which is a good thing. And we will just have to continue working with that. And I wanted to add one more thing, which is, on my channel, what I do is I select the people I want to talk to. So I choose the people that then my audience gets to hear. So in a sense, I create a filter function. I create a filter function as an editor in a newspaper does, right? So when you listen to podcasts, you also need to be aware that you're listening to the selection of the podcast, right? But that then recreates a bit of structure. So it takes away if you assess the podcast, if you assess the people who run a show, and then this show has a certain political drive, it has a certain political viewpoint, then you can trust that on this source you get such and such information, and then you try to find a different source with a different spin, and you get the information there, and you compare it to a third and a fourth source. So it's a little bit like choosing a newspaper or choosing a magazine. If you know approximately where they are, you have then a mental map of what kind of opinions you're getting. And that can help then structure the information space. But it's still a difficult thing to do, and we need to talk more about it and what is a healthy way also with students to create your own personal curated media experience in which you are in charge and not just an algorithm or an editor. I think that's where we need to go. We need to the awareness. I am the algorithm, I'm the editor, and I am choosing my sources. So source selection is probably a very important discussion to have.
Yeah. Again, I agree with you, because it's something that also in class, no matter what subject we are teaching, instead of providing a syllabus of saying this is what you're going to study about this topic, but the topic covers a vast range of possibilities and sources, and which one in groups or individually would like to address, and which order, and in which which ways we would like to contrast them or to contrapose each other. As more, I don't know if you're familiar with a radical thinker we had in Brazil in the 60s called Paulo Freire, and his famous worldwide, especially with Bell Hooks, when she wrote the book Teaching to Transgress. So she was inspired on his pedagogical philosophy, and he more concerned about Brazilian education would say we don't have to teach people to read only the word, read the world is important, and reading the world means how we would empower one to look at things and decide to do their own creation. And no matter how difficult that is. But there's also the issue of one asking, oh, could you help me? Could you guide me on that? And there's no guidance, right? There's only interaction, a sense of, okay, we can work collaborative, but my view or my position on things, as a result of my own choices in terms of how I build up my own path, in terms of how I select information, how I contrast them, and how I understand things, which is not a finished product in the end as well. While I was listening to you, and Osmar told me, when Osmar invited me to be with you, I had no idea what expects me, and but there was something that I'd like to say to you, that we could further this first encounter with Brazilian audience, and from this channel, from this conference, we will spread your make it more popular and try to spread your channel, but also here's an invitation that if you like to come to Brazil, because I think this one we can think together of projects that we can finance your visit through the universities, and get to know ourselves better, and because a lot of what you said and your thoughts and reflections today has to do with obviously that with our time here, our obstacles, our challenges, and somehow I feel that you're very generous in terms of your time here as well. So here I take this opportunity to invite you, for the projects and approximations between what you've been doing, and also bring together with you the people that in contact, as we are doing here tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's very kind. I would be happy to be with you all in Brazil directly in a conference room. That's also a very wonderful thing to meet, to be with people live and in person. One thing that I'm working on right now is trying to figure out how to create a platform so that we can interact more structuredly, like an application that would allow for a network interaction, especially among academics from the global south and the global north, to breach this divide. I don't have the answer yet how to do it. I know what I want to call it. I want to call it the multipolar peace network, but I don't have the actual structure yet. But as it progresses, I do hope that we can reach out and also meet in person. Thank you very much for your invitation today.
Oh, yeah, now that you mentioned this project, I think we have not the means, but we're starting a new we call here the program, we call the laboratory. We have one that's just started with artificial intelligence, and a lot of people that work with us as well, that work with platforms and media and also technology. So this is something we can discuss later on, and this is one of the reasons for the invitation of you, because we like to listen more of your talk, of your thoughts, but also think of long-term projects like that here. We like to collaborate with you and to be partners and help, and also be partners to any project that you think we would be worth discussing and working together.
Let's do that. Let's stay in touch. Let's just inform each other of how these projects are going.
Yeah. No, we'll be in touch. And I think this is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you again.
We'll be in touch, and no, so certainly we'll be in touch, and you hear a lot about us, and vice versa, right? For tonight, I think because I apologize again, for the technical problems I had. I was very sorry for that, but at the same time, I enjoyed so much listening to you. I'm going to listen to that again, and send to my friends. And certainly, the number of viewers on your channel will increase considerably. And I hope to hear other feedback from this conversation tonight and this morning there. From the bottom of my heart, from everybody in Brazil, we're very warm people and very affectionate. We take your generosity of accepting this invitation, which was prompt, I believe, through translation. Osmar just, wrote a message into Portuguese, asked for artificial intelligence to translate to you, and then he had this meeting arranged through translation, which I thought it was fantastic. And I will leave you with your words to finish this meeting. What else? Feel free to say whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for your work for bringing together a conference on this topic. I mean, the genocide in Gaza is a horrible event, but it's an event that needs to teach us all that we must engage in the global discussion and in the effort to restrain this kind of violence. It's many of us, especially in Europe, we thought that genocides were over basically, and they would only happen in extreme cases somewhere in like Rwanda, right, where like chaos breaks out and then mass violence happens. But turns out no, not at all. It happens on a structured political systematic level in the global north, inspired by very, very dark political instincts, and we can constrain those instincts, we can ameliorate it, but we need to understand them, right? And working together on the the tools to do the analysis and the tools to do the public discussion on it, and make them resilient and make sure that they work over the long time. That's a big job that we just have to live up to, and your network and your work is contributing to that. I hope mine is contributing to that, and out of that global network we might have a chance as humanity to somehow get out of these dark times.
That was beautiful. Thank you very much. From Brazil, and I have no more words to express the gratitude of your time and of your words and your encouragement. I think we are very inspired here, and I hope to see you soon and work together with you, with a lot of people that are here that are eager to do that, to make this accessible and to make change through our actions, first understanding, getting closer to each other, and finding means that we can, prevent any kind of genocide, no matter. Yeah, and you're very right again. It's especially in situations that we think, oh, everything is safe, and we don't feel that nothing is secure, and we have to be always aware of the dangers that goes around the world, no matter what. Thank you very much, Lottaz. And I wish you a good day, and we'll be in touch with you soon, okay? And
thank
for
you,
our
Felix.
listeners, thank you very much as well.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.